During a number of milestone events in the recent history of our planet, Stefano Radaelli, a tall, thin, bearded 33-year-old particle physicist from Milan, with keen eyes and an easy smile, has been at the controls. Some would even say that on these occasions, when the gargantuan particle accelerator known as the Large Hadron Collider, LHC, is being powered to energy levels so immense they have never been seen before, Radaelli is not only the most powerful man who ever lived, but also the only person in history who, with a click of a mouse, could alter forever the fate of the world, and perhaps even of the entire solar system. At 4:40 p.m. on Friday, March 5, 2010, Radaelli was once again the engineer in charge at the CERN Control Center outside the French village of Prevessin, just across the Swiss border from the headquarters of CERN, CERN, the European Organization for Nuclear Research. This is the place that governs the operation of the Large Hadron Collider, the most powerful particle accelerator in the world, as well as the series of smaller accelerators successively feeding the LHC with faster and faster protons, positively charged particles. It is from here that the LHC had just restarted after its winter break, incrementally increasing its power to new records. This time, the world's news media had been kept away from the collider as it powered up, but by a stroke of luck, I was allowed access to this nerve center of the entire LHC operation. I looked around me. I was in an ultra-modern space about the size of a basketball court, one of whose walls had windows that reached all the way up to the ceiling, framing the snow-capped mountains of the French Jura in the near distance. Arrayed along the other walls were dozens of large, colorful display screens. Scientists and engineers clustered around 4 large knots of tables laden with computer consoles. The control center looked like a cross between the flight deck of the Starship Enterprise and the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. But the big screens along the walls, on which Radaelli and his colleagues were now focused intently, were not displaying readouts from deep space or the latest stock prices. Instead, they registered a stream of precise data that originated deep inside a circular tunnel measuring 16.5 miles in length, buried 300 feet below us. These measurements included temperature, the lowest in the known universe, colder than the temperature of outer space; magnetic field strengths, among the most powerful ever created by man, some of them more than 200,000 times that of Earth's magnetic field; and energy, at this moment 450 giga-electron volts, GeV, an extraordinary level that would eventually ramp up to the almost inconceivable 7 tera-electron volts, TeV, which is more than 15 times as high. As the engineer in charge, Radaelli was the man whose commands produced the energy increases inside the tunnel below us by raising electric power, now within the green range on one of the large screens, to yellow, and in unusual circumstances to red, at hundreds of megawatts, the power consumption of a medium-sized city. The electric current, fed into some 10,000 giant superconducting magnets and radio frequency devices, concentrates, bends, and accelerates the LHC's twin proton beams, eventually raising their speeds to levels extremely close to that of light. There were many other young scientists in the room, including Peter Solander, a tall, bespectacled young technical expert from Sweden, who was in charge of part of the infrastructure of the collider. Next to his area was the center controlling the liquid helium cooling the superconducting magnets in the tunnel. Each bar on a screen on the wall before us represented 154 magnets, and all the bars were now green, indicating that none of the temperature measurements from the magnets underground exceeded 1.9 degrees Kelvin, that is, 1.9 degrees Celsius above absolute zero, or negative 456.25 degrees Fahrenheit. This is the ambient temperature for superconducting magnets. Should the temperature in any magnet rise above its present level, its bar would turn red, and the entire operation would immediately have to shut down to prevent a disaster. Other scientists were monitoring various aspects of the control of the most complicated scientific operation ever undertaken. On the left side of this large room was a subcenter for the feeder accelerators, which contributed power in stages. The first was a linear beam accelerator called LINAC-2, and it was followed by the more powerful proton synchrotron booster, then by the proton synchrotron itself, and finally by the superproton synchrotron, SPS, a machine with a celebrated history of discoveries in particle physics in the 1980s. This last accelerator fed protons directly into the Large Hadron Collider. Another cluster of consoles controlled all technical aspects of the giant magnets underground and the electric power flowing into them. The last cluster on the right, where Radaelli was standing, was the control center for the LHC itself. Right behind the young scientists huddled around the computer screens in this part of the room stood a stern-faced man in his 60s with wavy gray hair, wearing a light blue sweater and jeans, his eyes fixed on the third screen from the left on the wall above. Lyndon Lynn Evans was the silent power, the eminence grise of the control room. He was watching a blue line on the screen, which represented the power driving two opposing beams of protons racing around the 16.5-mile circuit underground at near light speed. Evans, a Welsh physicist known at CERN as the father of the LHC, represented the organization's top management. But as is typical in this highly unusual international collaboration of more than 10,000 scientists from around the world, the actual decisions were often left to the young people here, the scientists and engineers who run the day-to-day operation of the collider.